Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from Passionate Reds, only on All for United.
It's now 9:05 in the United Kingdom. Welcome to All for United, a very packed show for you this evening. I am Grant, your host, once again, taking the reins of what I'm sure will be an incident-backed show with plenty of talking points. And I'm joined, for the moment at least, by two very esteemed gentlemen who have so much knowledge on Manchester United. I have to my right, the one and only Mr. Mark Biggs. Mark, how you doing, my good man?
Fine, thank you very much, mate. You're giving me too much credit there, bro, but thank you. It's great to be on tonight. Really, really looking forward to the discussions. We're going to have lots to talk about, but yeah, I'm well, thank you.
It's great to have you on. And down below me, we have one half of the terrific Beyond the Pitch podcast. He also does so much stuff for World Football Index. Powerful Manchester United friend of mine as well, the one and only Mr. Callum McFadden. How you doing, my good man?
I'm doing well, Grant. Thank you again for the kind intro. And just to echo what Mark said, always delighted to be asked onto the channel and look forward to this evening.
It's great to see so many people tuning in and interacting already on the show. John Kermode says, good evening, everybody. Neil Byrne, evening, you lovely rabble. And a lot of others as well. Struan Garvey says, evening as well. I think Tom Wade has been enjoying and looking forward to coming on, or us going live, I should say, on the show. We are hoping to be joined by Phil Brown of Malachian's fame and, of course, of Beyond the Pitch as well. And hopefully he will join us in the not-too-distant future. As always, you can comment on the show. Please like and subscribe, All for United. We are on YouTube, we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, and you can engage with us in our comments. We have a very packed show tonight, so do get in your comments. So much to discuss. So just leave us your comments and we'll read them out on the show when we get an opportunity. But guys, it's been quite an extraordinary start to 2022. It's not been the greatest of 2021s before that, and already going into 2022, it certainly has been full of talking points. And Callum, I'm going to come to you first of all, because as of the 6th of January of 2022, where are Manchester United Football Club at? Because there's so much stuff happening off the pitch as well as on it, and not all for the right reasons.
Yeah, again, Grant, Manchester United are in a position where there are far more questions than there are answers. Phil and I spoke about this in regards to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's reign this season. We thought, when you bring in Ronaldo, you bring in Varane, you bring in Sancho, surely those players are going to be the answers. There's not going to be the questions of how many other players do we need to start competing. I still felt we needed a holding midfielder. You look at Chelsea, they've got Kante. Liverpool's midfield is more workmanlike, but together they complement each other well. You look at Man City with Rodri. United still don't have that level of quality in the middle of the park, and I felt like that would have to be addressed. But at the same time, I did feel United would have enough to challenge for the Premier League title. Obviously, wasn't to be under Ollie. He leaves the club. Michael Carrick has his interim spell. But as you've just alluded to there, Grant, we're in January now. Ralf Rangnick's been in for a matter of weeks as interim manager. And already there's so many questions. There are rumoured to be up to 17 players that are unhappy. Who are they? Why are they unhappy? What are they unhappy with? Ed Woodward stepping down in April. It's just been announced that Richard Arnold is going to take over. Richard Arnold's talking about Darren Fletcher and John Murtagh being given more responsibility and more autonomy at the club, which sounds good, but the question is that going to happen immediately? Is that going to happen in the summer? Are they going to have input into the next manager? And then crucially is, again, something that I've talked about extensively on recently, Ralf Rangnick's consultancy role. If he's only in charge to the summer, what does his role look like going beyond the summer for the next 2 years? Is it the sort of role where he will recommend a player to United, but United can go in a different direction? Or will it be a role with power? So to answer that question, Grant, United are still, as of the 6th of January, full of more questions than answers, which I find quite shocking.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly been a fairly incident-packed start to the season, and as you say, so many talking points. I'm delighted to finally be able to invite the one and only Phil Brown to the show. Phil, great to have you back on, mate. How are you? A very happy New Year to you.
And to yourself, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on, lads.
Yeah, it's great to have you on as well. We were just sort of discussing early start, obviously, to 2022. The 6th of January, it's certainly been an instant pack start. And Mark, I'm going to come to you next because obviously Callum's just alluded to you there and to everybody tuning in. So many talking points so far, and we're not even in the first week of January yet. Never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment, and Happy New Year, eh? I mean, just when you don't think things could get any worse. Obviously, lots of news has come out this week, lots of leaks, and you just don't know what to think, really. I mean, you have to take these things with a pinch of salt. I think 9 times out of 10, I think eventually it will come to fruition and we'll work out exactly what's going on. But I just can't believe that so many players are unhappy. You know, it's only been a couple of months now, give or take. They've not really had any chance to sort of settle in, really get a good run of training in, and obviously we're not seeing any differences on the pitch. I think it was said on another show, I think it's very much a false sense of security, that 30 minutes, 45 minutes against Palace. We were all sort of up in arms, this is great, this is exactly what we want to see, and it's just gone from bad to worse, quite honestly. And I feel for Ralf, I do. I think that, he comes with a huge reputation. I think that reputation is warranted, but unfortunately, one reason or another, with the players not putting the effort in or whatever it may be, it's just been a bit too stop-start for him, and hopefully, as a United fan, of course, but just from a neutral perspective, we want to see the players turning up. And
sorry, did I lose you? Let me log back in. Hold on.
Go on. I think Phil's just dropped out there. Sorry about that. Yeah, go on.
No, I'd finished, mate. That was it. It's going to be lots of changes, obviously, and Ed Woodward, as obviously we've known this for a little while now. He's obviously finally left the club, or at least will do at the end of February, and it's just on to the next man now, and hopefully Arnold can do a better job. And from reading certain things today, perhaps he will be just concentrating on the business and commercial side, and perhaps it will be given to footballing brains, or at least we hope. We can only go on the last 8 years, and some. Things weren't obviously pretty or good at the last moments of Ferguson's reign, and we can only go on that track record, and hopefully things are going to take a change, things are going to become better, and we'll just have to wait and see.
There's just so much to unpack, even at the start of this year.
I couldn't hear a single word of what Mark just said. I don't know if it's my audio, lads. I can hear you, Fan. I can hear Callum, but I couldn't hear a single word that Mark just said. Do I need to adjust my audio, lads? Is it just
I could hear you fine at this end, Phil, honestly.
Well, I couldn't hear anything that Mark was saying. I didn't hear a single word of it.
Oh.
So,
could you guys hear me all right?
Let me log back in, lads, one really quick, because I couldn't hear that. 1 second.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for Phil, we can actually take some comments from people who are tuning in. It's obviously great to see some people tuning in already. Gaynor Hammond says, am I the only one who thinks the reports about 17 players being unhappy, wanting to leave are nonsense? That's just a thought there from Gaynor. Tony Squire, I've seen a list of 13 that apparently that want to leave, but it's hard to confirm media reports without the club verifying it. Apex is obviously very active as well. It says the media knew what they were doing interviewing Luke Shaw. They did not just randomly select them. There's so many things to unpack here. I think the thing I sort of look at this, it's a little bit like at the moment, Manchester United. Sorry, go on, Colin. I've cut across you there.
No, I just want to come in on that comment. The media don't select Luke Shaw for interview. The club puts players forward, or players volunteer to speak to the media. So the media don't request Luke Shaw unless he's given man of the match. So Luke Shaw was put up by the club, or he wanted to speak. So I just wanted to clarify that there. Luke is a good speaker, and someone that sometimes I think can be a bit too honest, you could say, for someone who is representing the club in that moment. But I suppose fans want honesty, and that's something that he regularly gives.
Okay, no worries for that, Colin. Thanks for clarifying that. The way I see Manchester United currently, fellas, is like somebody away to wash some windows. They have a sponge in a bucket, but the bucket has got 5 or 6 holes in it, and water is dribbling out the bottom of it. So this is where, on tonight's show, we're going to have a really good discussion about what's going on with the players, what's going on further afield, and how can we solve a problem like Manchester United? There is really a myriad of problems to assess. And Callum, I'm going to come to you first, because while we're on the subject of Luke Shaw, but this is probably a good time to bring this up because I've certainly brought it up. When he came out to Sky and basically said that he didn't feel comfortable being on the pitch as similar to the players that were in that match against Wolverhampton Wanderers, what was your reaction to that?
I have to say I admired his honesty, because it's very easy to come out after a game at home against Wolves where there is a defeat and say we tried our best, it just wasn't our day, it wasn't clicking for us. But I think he was honest, brutally honest perhaps, that he felt that the team wasn't together, and that is a pretty shocking statement. But I think all three of us, and Phil, if he comes back, would agree that we've not seen a united performance with the players that are on the park at the moment. And I think Luke Shaw's hit the nail on the head with his comments. The comment that I found most intriguing was, hopefully the coach or the manager can come with some new ideas or some other ideas. Now, I think a lot of people took that comment as being a real dig at Ralf Rangnick, but United had 7 days between the Wolves game and the Villa Cup game. United, bizarrely, in my opinion, gave everyone 2 days off, and the players are back, as far as I'm led to believe, tomorrow, from what I've been reading on The Athletic and other sources. Why on earth, after a defeat of that manner, when you've got a full week to prepare for the Villa Cup game, you've had the disruption of COVID before Christmas, are players off for 2 days? I just find that side of it utterly bizarre. And was Luke Shaw maybe trying to make a point about that the coach can bring something else? Maybe we need to work together for a more sustained period. We've got this week, let's use it. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but I just find that very strange. I really do.
Yeah, it's certainly a very interesting circumstances at the moment, and I think something certainly had to have been said, I felt, in some respects, but it was certainly very telling. Phil, going to come to you next on this, because obviously you've just joined us again. We were just talking about Luke Shaw coming to the media to talk after the Wolves game, saying he didn't feel comfortable being on the same pitch as some of the others. What's your reaction to that, and do you think something had to be said? Was he just, as Callum alluded to there, was he just brutally honest?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, when you watch that Shaw interview, you can see that he's choosing his words very, very carefully. And the first thing that I sensed from it was he wanted to say a lot more, but didn't, but said enough. Look, there's a lot of blame going around that dressing room for what's going on, and players are very quickly to deflect that from themselves and let you know that it's not them, it's not me, it's him. Right, I think you've got a lot of that going on, as you could see with the leaks. I think it also illustrates how disingenuous these stupid social media apologies are, and the comments after the game about taking a good hard look at ourselves and I need to do better. Clearly, they don't think that. But also, it's an illustration of where Luke Shaw is. You know, Luke Shaw under Mourinho was considered to be one of the weakest players in the dressing room, rightly or wrongly. Certainly didn't have the ability to do an interview like that publicly. And I think it's a reflection of his standing within the football club, the fact that he came out and said that. And it's blatantly obvious there's cliques inside that dressing room. You see it on the pitch on a Saturday or on a Sunday. And if you watch closely, you can more or less see who they are. You can see there's a Portuguese clique, right? That clearly they're unhappy with how things are, which their body language demonstrates. And Bruno Fernandes and Ronaldo have not looked happy all season, right? I don't know if that was part of that. Pogba, Martial with the French clique, right? You can see that there's problems inside that dressing room, and you can see they're all related, right? And I'm sure there's an English link as well, clique as well. Why wouldn't there be? About who's responsible for this? In any business, in any house, in any place, the culture is set by the most senior people. Those are the people that enforce the rules. But more importantly, those are the people that incentivize their employees. And how employees are incentivized typically has a big correlation as to how they behave at work. So if footballers are not being incentivized for football reasons, even the people above, you know, if you look at Woodward and Richard Arnold, they've got a pay raise every year. Why? If you're judging them on football and not business, there's no justification for that. So clearly these people are incentivized commercially, not sportingly. because that's the metric of success in their job. Well, when you've got individual brands, right, who are more, Richard Arnold, what was he talking about, social media metrics when they're signing players? Right?
Yep.
Everything about the football club is set up for the individual. It's set up for the individual commercially. It's set up for, they're all obsessed with their own image rates and everything else. So what you see in it is cyclical. What we see under, this exactly the same situation under Mourinho. Toxic dressing room, players not fit. If you remember, two of Mourinho's 3 seasons, he came out and said he didn't have a squad to play a stronger squad in the last couple of games. He had to pick and choose the games. Said they weren't fit. Solskjaer came in and said they need to be the fittest team in the league. Now their stats are appalling. Why does this keep happening? That happens because it's tolerated above. When Ferguson left, his power got usurped. You see this at Chelsea and other football clubs where managers have no control over who comes in, who comes out. So it's hard to earn respect of someone when you can't discipline them. But ultimately, they don't really have to listen to you. Because at United, you've got players getting contract extensions that haven't earned them. Why is Jesse Lingard being offered a contract extension when he's uploading pictures of him in a West Ham kit? Right? Why is Paul Pogba getting a contract extension when his agent has been linking him away from football clubs from the day he came here? Right? Now look at Chelsea, how they handled Lukaku. They're getting contracts because nothing to do with football. It has to do with commercial value. How do you regulate a dressing room when that is what's valued more than anything? Simple thought experiment, lads. Sit down in front of Glazers and ask them what would they rather have, a positive balance sheet or a positive place in the league. They have to choose one. We all know what they're going to choose.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely interesting views as always. I think it's a very certainly circumstances which I think are definitely very much in play with that. And before I come to you, Mark, so a lot of people really commenting on already, and I think this guy Chad Evans, who's good, the Twitter handle Chad Evans says this is the worst Manchester United dressing room I've ever seen. We're seeing so many comments. John Kerbo says perhaps someone knew these leaks were coming, so they gave players 2 days off. I feel. Didn't want bad feeling on the Wednesday following revelations Monday and Tuesday evening. There's so many comments coming in. Weekly Armchair says, as Roy Keane said, lepers don't change their spots. There is a massive egos that need to be put down a peg or two. Mark, just a bit of a kind of canvas of that. What's your reaction to some of the comments and also what Phil said as well, which I think was some very big points that he made there, which I think were very valued.
Some very good points. Can you hear me a bit better now, Phil?
A little bit, mate, yeah.
Good. Listen, it has capitulated completely, and I can't. You're absolutely right. We have offered contracts to players over the years that really. I mean, we've had many conversations about the players not really. Shouldn't really be getting those contracts, and for some reason we are trying to keep hold of those players. I do struggle to understand exactly as you said why we are offering Lingard a new contract. He's hardly played for a season and a half. He's obviously been away at West Ham, and I do think it's very disrespectful with how he has been posting on social media. To be honest with you, I love Pogba to bits. I think he's a far better player than a lot of people give him credit for, and we know on his day he can be world class. But I am a bit sick of it now. I think that there is a lot of disrespect there, and I've read a number of things today suggesting that if Ferguson was still amongst it and still the manager, I think that he would have told these players to go, told these players to fuck off. And it really is a crying shame that we are in this position. And I think you're absolutely spot on, Phil, that I think, unfortunately, and I think that's with a lot of football these days, not just Manchester United, but I think Manchester United have taken a forefront into being so commercially astute and trying to, you talk about Bayern Munich having footballing brains. They're making money, but they're probably not, they're not making as much money as United. And I think that United are in a position where they're trying to get everyone to follow that train, and you're absolutely right. And it is such a shame, you want to, hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't it? But you want to go back to the days where it was about playing for the club And you don't see that enough these days, and it is a real shame. Unfortunately, it's the world that we live in, where there's money to be made, opportunities are going to be taken, and it's, you know, down to us to obviously fund that in some sort of way. I just hope that they clear out the players that they need to. I mean, 13 out of 17 of them, some of them were a bit of a shock to me, and I can't understand how it can go on for so long. For players to be unhappy and nothing to be sort of fixed in any way. It just amazes me.
Yeah, I mean,
Grant, if you wouldn't mind me, I want to just add one thing to this because it's important.
Okay.
When King made that comment, leopards don't change their spots, a lot of those players are gone, right? And there's a lot of new players that are doing exactly the same as what the players who left have done. Now, Solskjaer's gone. If 17 players want to leave, clearly it has nothing to do with who the manager is. Clearly it's got other problems with the football club. Clearly there's a problem with people other than Solskjaer, other than the manager. But these people never pay with their jobs. Everyone else does, right? But somehow they get another crack. They get pay raises. They get to choose the next guy. Richard Arnold coming out with all these comments today. Richard Arnold is as much a part of the problems at Manchester United as anyone else is. And he doesn't get to divorce himself because he got a promotion. By what metric does he deserve a promotion? This football club have been like Brewster's Millions. They've wasted a circa £1 billion on transfers. And had they been successful, you can bet your life Richard Arnold would be out there making sure that a lot of that was reflection on his decision making. So he doesn't get to divorce himself from the failures of the football club. So by what metric is Richard Arnold deserving of that position?
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting talking point. I'm sure people on here will certainly have their comments, and I'm sure we will have as well. I wanted to pick up, and I was going to send this to Callum next for this next one, which I thought was a very good comment. I'm just trying to find it here. It was going back to the Shaw interview. It's Tony Squire who said this. Was a really interesting point. It was refreshing to hear a player speak the truth instead of the same robotic statement of "we weren't good enough and we need to improve." We've all heard that, seen that clip of Roy Keane going, "Oh, apologies to the fans." No emotion behind it. We've seen that all day long. That was a terrible Roy Keane impression, by the way. But do you think that sort of thing shows that Maguire doesn't have that leadership at Manchester United, or that confidence to showcase his leadership at the club, whereas Shaw maybe does? Or is it, on the other hand, something that, you know, United need to look further afield for someone as an alternative leader?
Maguire's infamous quote for me was, "I'm only here because I have to be." And for me, there was a comment came in from one of the viewers earlier on that said, "Where is the captain in this situation? Where is the man who's supposed to be the leader on the park?" Like a Roy Keane, a Brian Robson going back many years ago, to stand up and take responsibility and try and rally the troops. He's non-existent as a leader. He's one of the leaks that's come out is that he's felt as if he can't be the way he normally would be since Ronaldo's came in. For me, that reflects horribly on him as a character. Again, that's obviously a report. I'm not saying that's a gospel truth. Obviously, we don't know if it is. But if that is true, why on earth, when a player like Ronaldo or Varane or Sancho comes into the dressing room, do you feel less empowered? Surely having a better quality of player around you should help you step up your performance on the park, should help you step up your leadership qualities as captain, because you've got a higher standard of player around you. You should be tapping into Cristiano Ronaldo, into Rafael Varane. These guys have been there and won things 5 times over, while you're still trying to achieve even a third of what they've achieved. So he should be tapping into that. As I say, the comment came in earlier. He's been non-existent throughout this. The comment against City, "I'm only here because I have to be," for me was damning. And let's be honest, if you asked most Manchester United fans, match day going, or fans from across the world, do you believe he's suitable to be Manchester United captain? I think most of them would say no. And if that's how the fans feel, you can be sure that there's many players in that dressing room, Phil alluded to the cliques earlier, that will be thinking the exact same thing. And it's dysfunctional, because if you've got players that aren't wanting to pull in the same direction, there's so many differences and jibes going from agent to agent or player to player, you're going to be in a situation like this. As I said on Beyond the Pitch yesterday with Phil, we are only in the first week of January, and this is the situation. I said yesterday, I want to be positive and say it's going to be a good 2022, But if you're being realistic, it's only going to get worse between now and the end of the season. If this is the toxic atmosphere after the defeat at home to Wolves, what's going to happen if you go out the FA Cup next week? What's going to happen if you have a couple of bad defeats back to back in a row that Ollie had towards the end? It's a horrible, horrible situation. And to just round that off, Grant, the leadership is non-existent from the captain of this football club.
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting. I want to go back to and I'll go to Mark on this, the cliques in the dressing room situation there. And Phil certainly alluded to that very early on. I've heard rumours on the social media that Mike Phelan has been sort of used as a sort of a peace deal in the middle of all this. What is the situation there? And do you think something like this is actually one of the things that United could do without?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, Phelan probably has quite a good rapport with the players. I think when he was brought back in, that was, one of the particular reasons to try and get everybody together. But I can't imagine, even in a normal work environment, as a manager, as a captain, why you would allow cliques to happen, because you want that togetherness. You want everyone to be able to have a good rapport with each other, because that's how teams perform and teams get together and potentially win games as well. So I thought it was really bad after Mourinho. And obviously the way that he spoke about players negatively made them feel, but I just don't understand how it's got to this situation.
Yeah, no, very much so. Sorry, Phil, come on. On you go.
Think about this. Mike Phelan's been in that dressing room for how many years? So how on earth is he supposed to go in and fix the dressing room that was broken when he was in it? And here's the thing. What's he going to do? Walk in there and go, now come on, boys, play nice, show your toys, don't be getting upset. And by the way, if your problem can be solved with a chat by Mike Phelan, and that's the reason why you can't go out and play well, get the fuck out of this club.
He's walked out of his seat in frustration, and I think many people tuning into that will certainly be following the same direction. Well, you sat back down, Phil, which I have to actually agree with you, to be fair.
What if say after 99, Roy Keane would rather die than lose?
Yeah.
With every blade of grass, and now we got people that need Mike Phelan to come in and like Kofi and put the arm around him and go, it's all right, son, play nice now. You're supposed to be a winner. Right? Winners don't need Mike. Cristiano Ronaldo needed Mike Phelan halfway through his Real Madrid career to talk him into playing well. Do you think that Abramovich needed that? It's just insane. It's just an illustration of what in the adult Disneyland environment that United deliberately created.
That was the phrase that I
cherished above all the individual.
That was the phrase I heard on the recent Beyond the Pitch podcast. I actually listened to that earlier today, Phil, and I kind of was nodding and went down the street listening to that earlier today, thinking he's got that spot on there, and I think that was definitely something to there. John Kermode, Callum's just come on to your point, says, I agree with you. Maguire has completely failed as a leader. I do rate him as a player, but for me, he's not a true captain. The fact that he has happened on his watch, he's done nothing to prevent it. Tom Wade says, Maguire lost the captaincy the day he made that I'm only here because I have to be comment. You said that earlier on. That was very much there for the debate. Neil Burton says, there's far too much conjecture with United. And Carl, I'm just going to come to you on that, because one of the things that I have to discuss, the continual omission of Donny van de Beek. Where do we sit as of the 6th of January with Donny van de Beek? Is his Manchester United journey over?
Donny van de Beek must be the worst footballer in training in football history. He's not got a game under Ollie. He barely got a game under Carrick in interim, and he can't get a look in under Ralf Rangnick. So he must be the worst football player in training, because there is no reason why he shouldn't be able to force himself in. I think I was on the show a couple of weeks ago, or I was speaking to Keenan on the show a couple of weeks ago, and Bruno Fernandes was going to be suspended. And the one thing I said to Keenan at the time was, with Bruno Fernandes suspended, if Donny van de Beek can't start now, when many of us agree that if Bruno's out, he'd probably be the person to come in, then he's in massive trouble. He didn't start that game. Has he started a game all season in the Premier League? I'm not sure if he has.
No, I don't think he has. No.
So that illustrates the point. Phil Jones has made more starts in the Premier League than Donny van de Beek this season. His career at Manchester United, you would have to say, is over. Phil and I at the start of the season said we'd like to give him this season, see him be given more opportunities. That hasn't happened. It certainly doesn't look as if it's going to suddenly happen now. So as we speak now, Grant, I think he will move on loan with a view to a permanent deal, or he'll move permanently in this window, because it makes no sense to keep a player at the football club who will be on decent wages if you're not going to utilise him at all. So for him personally, it's better that he leaves the club, because he's not getting the opportunities, and the opportunities aren't going to suddenly come overnight. It's, as you say, it's the 6th of January. If he was going to get these opportunities, they'd be here by now.
And Mark, the thing that really stands out for many Manchester United fans who are tuning to this, you have Fred, you have Scott McTominay. We've mentioned Pogba and the fact that he's not been playing too many games and all the situations that's happening there. You've got Nemanja Matic. And Van de Beek cannot get in ahead of those 3 guys in particular. That's a damning indictment, isn't it?
Yeah, really, I really struggle to understand that. You'll know from previous shows, I've got a lot of time for Donny van der Beek, and I wanted nothing more for him to come into this squad and do very well. But first of all, he's not been given the opportunity, and really, if I'm honest, when he's come in to the side, he's probably not grabbed it like he should and played as well as he possibly should. But again, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you're not playing enough minutes, then you can't get that momentum, and you can't get and show everybody around you what you're capable of. But you're absolutely right, Callum. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, everyone would have put money on Van der Beek to start with Bruno out of the squad, and he didn't. And that's obviously a damning thing. Laurie Whitwell today said Rangnick is coming to the same conclusion as Solskjaer in the fact that Donny van der Beek isn't cut out for the demands of the Premier League. It's understood that his technique is amazing, but he struggles to cover the ground in training. So there's obviously a lot that goes on behind the scenes in the background that we don't get to see. And whilst we see the player in him, the intelligence, the cohesion with players like Mata and Bruno and those intelligence players, there's obviously a bigger reason that we don't see. And I feel sorry for him, but at the same time, you have to come in and you have to give it your all. And if you're not doing that, then like anybody else within the squad, you don't deserve to play.
I mean, Phil, coming on to that off the back of Mark's comment there, is it purely an attitudinal problem that Van de Beek has not had a chance at United?
Well, what I have a problem with is United could have sold him in the summer. If he was that bad, where he's so blatantly not good enough and not going to contribute, why would they turn down a bid for Everton? Given the fact that they had a defensive midfielder need, why would they carry someone in a position they have no intention of using when they could sell him and buy a player in a position that they need? Remember, Solskjaer told him to stay. Rangnick is telling him to stay and not leave in January because he wants to go and play regular football to get in the Dutch team. So that's not consistent with he's absolutely nowhere near good enough. Because if he's nowhere near good enough and he's not going to play, you're not going to miss him. And I don't understand it. It's completely confusing to me because there really hasn't been any consistent leak about why he's not playing. And when you talk about it, a damning indictment, it is, but I don't understand why United are desperate to keep him. It makes no sense to me. I mean, Van de Beek could be sold in January, no problems, right? He could have been sold in the summer, no problems. United had offers for him. So why are they turning them down? It makes no sense to me. They did something similar to Romero. They had offers that no chance to play him, and they kept him. And so a club that's saying we need to sell to buy, and at some point, this is where I do feel sorry for Van de Beek in the sense that, look, okay, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to play, that's fine, but why won't you let me leave? Because that's a fair point, right? And when there's players who were desperate to convince to stay who haven't been good enough, right? So I don't really understand. I mean, United have to answer a couple of questions. Why did you buy him? One. And two, why is he still here going into this? He's had 3 transfer windows since he signed, 2 really. But why would you sell him? Yeah. So to me, I don't understand it.
It's certainly a very messy situation, and there's so many comments on Van de Beek. Brown Knight says, Donny van de Beek's Man United career never even started. Struan Garvey says, it must be someone in training for Donny. Gaynor Hammond says, maybe Van de Beek's attitude isn't what it should be. It's strange that 3 managers don't pick him. Apex says, Donny van de Beek has not played 90 minutes this season. It's understandable and best for him to leave because that is his situation. Brown Knight also goes again, says Van de Beek is not a central defensive midfielder. Him not getting in ahead of Fred McTominay match is not surprising. Him not getting in even when Bruno is unavailable is troubling. Anybody want to jump in on those comments, particularly the last one? Calm. Oh, Mark, I'm sorry. Come to you first.
So you go, Cal. Go on. I'll go after you, buddy.
Just the point on Fernandes being unavailable, for me, that is the big one. If you're considering that he's not going to displace Fred, Matic, McTominay, that's absolutely fine. That's not where he plays. I know some people are saying of try him there, but realistically he can't play there, so let's not consider him for that position. But if it's known, as it was at Ajax, that one of his best positions is in that number 10 position behind the striker, and that the main man who plays in that position is unavailable, and the coach would rather pick someone else entirely, for me that is the biggest troubling point. And I think Gaynor Hammond's point is spot on, and Phil's alluded to it there. We just don't know. Is it an attitude problem? Is it poor performances in training? We just simply don't know, but it has to be something, and it has to be clarified sooner rather than later. But I suppose it's not been clarified now after 18 months, so I probably shouldn't hold my breath.
I mean, there's been so many talking points over this, not even first week of the year, and we're already 35 minutes of the show. So many discussion points. We want to just get you guys' thoughts here after about 36 minutes in. Today's news, obviously, Richard Arnold, we mentioned this earlier on, will take over as CEO on the 1st of February. Phil, I'm going to come to you on this because you have spoken quite a lot about this whole situation. Is it all just another brick in the wall, to quote Pink Floyd?
Well, as you said, Richard Arnold's been the second most senior employee at Manchester United for a long time. Richard Arnold is a commercial guy. He knows absolutely nothing about football. He wasn't even a football fan. He was a rugby fan. He was a rugby player. One thing I will say about Ed Woodward, like him or loathe him, when he came in, he made an effort to communicate with fans. Richard Arnold's released a number of quotes today that both concern me, and I know they're an attempt to convince United fans that everything's going to be great. But Matt, turning around and saying you're going to give more autonomy to the technical and football director, who are you to tell them anything about football? Why do you have any control? They report directly to Arnold, and see, this is why the titles are not important. What's important is job description. You can talk about directors of football, but if they're impotent directors of football that can't affect change in any meaningful way, that's a point, an ornament. This is why, what's this consultancy role that Rangnick is going to have? What exactly does that mean, right? My 6-year-old has a consultancy role in his house. I don't listen much to her, right? But she has a consultancy role. I mean, it's totally meaningless unless you can affect change meaningfully. Richard Arnold has never displayed any serious commitment to making serious change. In fact, I believe a lot of what we see at Manchester United is directly as a result of his thinking. And in fact, my suspicion is he would be worse in some sense than Woodward. I hope that he learns from those mistakes, but I have my serious doubts. He's a commercial guy. He knows nothing about football, knows nothing about what Manchester United are supposed to be. And when you're dealing with a guy who tropes in social media numbers and Twitter numbers and is glorifying stuff like that, that concerns me, because that tells me where his expertise lies has got nothing to do with running a football club.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly very interesting news that today. I mean, we're talking there about Ralf. He's only been in the job for 6 games, 3 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. That loss being against Wolves, Mark, and I'm going to come to you on this. Does this situation today change Ralph's mindset at all? Because, I was listening to the Totally Football Show before I came on today, and I think it was Tom Williams who was quoted saying that Ralf Rangnick is the right man for the wrong position currently at Manchester United, and it feels like the shortest honeymoon period ever in management. Do you share Tom's views?
Yeah, I saw that quote myself today, and I do agree with that. Obviously, there was a lot of excitement behind him coming in, but it's just not quite working for him yet. With regards to, look, we said this at the beginning of the show, or at least I did, where Arnold has obviously come in. He's been behind the scenes, as Phil's already said, and really we've had 8 years and some of how it's being run, and to be honest with you, we have to see the proof in the pudding, quite frankly, and until that point, I don't think things are going to change. I did read today in response to Gainer's comment there, that Richard isn't going to be part of the footballing side of things, and there are going to be footballing brains, possibly, obviously Ralf Rangnick, further down the line. But again, we've got to wait and see on that. You can't blame United fans having an air of scepticism every time there's a change in management, in the commercial side of things, someone move into another position, because it's just been the same shit every time, and it doesn't, of course it doesn't. Of course we're going to be cynical and view it and take the mick and say, oh, it's not going to change anything. Of course we are, because that's what we're used to, and at some point they are going to need to change things. I hope that Richard Arnold is going to come in and go, I know the kind of crap Ed has received over the years, and I know that I can't make those same mistakes. So I hope that he comes in and he does step away from the footballing side of things. He does stick to the commercial side of things. And if he's been doing that as a number 2 for years, he will be great at it. And United need that. But I hope he does step aside, and I hope that the footballing brains do take over and we can finally get some positivity back into the footballing side of things.
Yeah, very much so, Mark, and I completely share those sentiments. Phil, you've got some love on the socials from Brendan Chappell, who says he has the same doubts as yourself. Callum, I'm going to come to you on this as well, because Ralph's come in, it has not been the greatest of starts, not been the most terrible of starts, but it's certainly been a lukewarm start, as I called it. I'm going to read you a quote from Chris Sutton on Radio 5 Live after the Wolves game. Some players run and some don't. With the signings they made in the summer, United's next step was to win a title. Out of possession, they are hopeless. They are a disaster. At this early stage, there was a lot of talk about this high press, this Gegen press. Ralph comes across as this very deep thinker. He's a very, very clever guy. He's inspired a lot of some of the top coaches across the world. But let's be honest here, this is the biggest job he's probably ever had in his career.
It is the biggest job that he's ever had in his career, and I listened to Gabriel Marcotti a lot on ESPN, and when Ralf Rangnick came into Manchester United, Gab described it as probably being the dream opportunity for him if he's given the power to shape the club. But he was sort of mystified as to why he would come in as a coach for 6 months and then start getting to grips with trying to rip out the club internally if he's given that power. His start, as you say, Grant, has been lukewarm at best. The concerns that I have is, and I don't want to be disrespectful and come across as elitist, but Norwich are absolutely horrific. Probably one of the worst teams I've seen in my lifetime watching Premier League football. We beat them 1-0 with a penalty. Newcastle United, I know Eddie Howe's came in there for a bit of a bounce, but they're a team who have struggled to score lots of goals. But against United, they looked as if they could have scored 5 or 6. They were absolutely dominant in an attacking sense. And then you look at games at Wolves at home, where you really should be taking the game to them, and I worry at the moment that if United do go out the cup and go on a spiral of losing or drawing a couple of games in the trot, if these leaks are as they are after one defeat under Ralf Rangnick, what are they going to be like when the resolve is really tested? I mean, when the going gets tough, you want to see leaders, as we talked about earlier. You want to see character. You want to see a United dressing room. These players have thrown their toys out the pram because they've been asked to run a little bit more, and because they've lost at home to Wolves. So what on earth makes us think that they're going to have the mental resolve to get their heads down and fight for 4th place, which is, again, I've said it before, it's embarrassing that we're having to utter the words fight for 4th place. This is Manchester United. The players that were brought in the summer should have strengthened the club. The finishing in the top 4 shouldn't even be a question. The fact that it is a question now for me is just an absolute shambles. But as I say, I think it is a dream opportunity for him, Grant. And just to add one more point on Richard Arnold, I think it's easy for him at the moment to see he's not going to get involved in the football side, if that's true. It's like someone on a diet saying, I don't plan on eating chocolate anytime soon. As soon as you hand them the keys to the candy store and all that candy's in front of them, I think they'd be tempted to maybe grab a couple of chocolate bars off there. So that'll be the big test for Richard Arnold. It's easy at the moment to say, look, I'm going to take over from Ed. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to delegate to John Murtagh and Darren Fletcher. But when he's in that position and that power is there, it'll be interesting to see how he uses it, because the temptation will be there. Because look at Mourinho. I mean, Phil and I have talked about this before. Someone at Manchester United told Mourinho, "You cannot sign a centre back." Who was that person? Because it certainly wasn't someone of a footballing background. It can't have been, because there's nobody with a footballing background in any position of power. There wasn't Lennon at the moment, where Ralf is head coach only. There isn't now.
I had a really great question for Phil, but I'm going to save it for the next time we come on this pass, because Keane's come up with a really good question here. Do you think Jones should keep his place on Monday in the FA Cup game, as he was the only shining light against Wolves? So the floor is yours, Phil.
I would say he can pick any position he wants, with the exception of goalkeeper. When a guy hasn't played in 2 years and comes back and shows 9 or 10 of those players up, what does that tell you? Harry Maguire should not be starting any football game. The only reason why he is because of his price tag, right? He's done nothing all season to justify being played. Absolutely nothing, right? So now he's not alone there, right? But of course he should start. And by the way, for the United fans that have repeatedly abused Phil Jones over the years, I saw a lot of you come out and praise him the other night, okay? Well, the emotion that guy showed walking off the pitch the other night is reflective of how we all feel.
Completely.
Right? So instead of lauding babies, right? Because, you know, I was at the Burnley match, right? It cost me thousands to go there. I left my family at Christmas. I left everyone behind. There's going to be lots of fans like me that do that. And these players can't be bothered to show up for 90 minutes for them, to put in a performance and kicking a football around. It's a disgrace. And Harry Maguire's the captain. What about Harry Maguire would you respect as a man? There's an old saying, don't take criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from. Would you trust Harry Maguire? Any situation? I wouldn't. Harry Maguire's not a leader, and he never should have had the captaincy. In fact, it's an indictment on the rest of that football club that he was picked as a captain. So to me, Phil Jones and De Gea, maybe, are probably one of the only two players that deserve to start.
Okay, very interesting views. We will come and talk about the Villa game, but there's just so many comments to catch up on here. John Kermode, who's a very prominent viewer of the show, says, I personally worry for this season. Remember, Ralf has not managed a side for a few years. Yes, he's intelligent about the game, but manager after a long time out will be easy for him. Jarvis Cocker says, Rangnick has the odds against him. Many great leaders have tried before him. It's impossible to fix the squad if the leadership of the club won't back him, but we sort of have said that throughout the show. Tyrone Williams says, the players are a disgrace. No leaks at all when Ollie was boss despite poor performances. Rangnick has been there 5 minutes and they're already crying. Can't believe it. Let's kind of move on to talk about the Aston Villa game. And Mark, I'm going to come to you on this, because one of my first things I'm going to ask you is a kind of quote that I picked up from Adam Crafton of The Athletic. And it's a little bit about Ronaldo, because, you know, bit of a interesting dynamic, particularly off the back of the Wolves game. And he just says, even the most devoted Ronaldo supporter will be questioning whether his presence in the side is bringing as much as it might be taking away from United's collective effort, his individual performances aside. You know, where do we see this situation? Because there's a lot of people are saying that Ronaldo has come to Manchester United, scored the requisite goals that he's been doing, not his fault, but arguably the rest of the team have just kind of said, okay, they've down tools and passed over responsibility to him.
Yeah, listen, he's one of the best players in the world, still is. He's obviously getting on, but you bring in a player like that, he doesn't press well from the front. That is absolutely true. But when you have a player like that that's going to give you goals, that has that experience, you work around him. You have a system that will allow him to do what he does best. It's very difficult to know what goes on. It's very difficult to understand whether, you know, he is a good figure in the dressing room. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe he is. You've seen him in the Euros, in the World Cup, and how emotional and how together he is with his fellow countrymen or whoever. And I I can't imagine that he is a negativity at all. It's very, very difficult, but ultimately he's still one of the best in the world. He's come home for one last dance. It's got us all on our feet. It's not work. Well, in fact, we talk about players that that obviously can hold their heads high. Phil Jones, David De Gea, but I think Ronaldo can as well. Not necessarily for that game, but he's got us out some really sticky situations this year, and that's what his ability and his experience will bring you. And as I said, I think that if you bring someone into the club that is like that, you work around them. You work those other players around that particular player.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. And Carl, I'm going to come to you again off the back of that because, Ronaldo, since he's come to the club, a lot of Manchester United fans were, on the whole, really delighted to see him come back into the team, come back into the setup at United. He scored the important goals. But here's my question to you. We've had this discussion about where does United's long-term attacking strategy go forward? Is there so much reliance on Ronaldo that everybody else is kind of like, well, what do we do in all this?
I want to, when you mention Ronaldo, I think it's important. Gary Neville had a quote at the start of the season that said, if United sign a striker of the quality of Harry Kane, I think they can compete for the title. They then go and get Ronaldo, who's an infinitely better player than Harry Kane when it comes to goal scoring. They bring him in, and unfortunately, they've not got close to the title. For the long term, Cristiano Ronaldo's not the long term of Manchester United, but the minimum expectation I would have is that Manchester United, and I don't want to, by saying provide a team for Ronaldo, I don't mean that he's bigger than the club, but what I'm trying to say is if he's got two years at the very, very top elite level of football, you would expect United to be able to have provided a structure where he could flourish, and he, as Gary Neville hinted at, with the United need a top-class striker part, that he could be the sort of guy that would take United to a title, to a Champions League final, a Champions League success, whatever it may be. The fact that he's come in, and this is the situation that he is in and the club is in, he will be going mad. I can imagine on the training ground. Phil mentioned earlier, would you take advice from Harry Maguire? If Maguire's feeling uncomfortable from Ronaldo, I can understand why. Imagine Harry Maguire pulling up Ronaldo or someone in that ilk. I mean, they would just turn around and laugh. I think United had to provide a basis for Ronaldo coming back that he could flourish. And I think the holding midfielder for me is a big part of the issue, but it clearly isn't the only part of the issue. If it was a one-player fix-all problem, these players wouldn't be crying. 17 players saying they want out of the club, as Phil said. There's a massive issue behind the scenes. But to answer your question, Grant, in 5 years' time, is Cristiano Ronaldo going to be firing Manchester United anywhere? No, because I don't think he's got 5 years left in him at the elite level of football. Anybody that's 36, 37, I don't think he's got 4 or 5 years in. But for the 2 years that you're probably going to get out of him, United should have provided a balanced squad that could help him flourish and take United to big trophies. People are saying, if United win an FA Cup, it'll be a big success this season. Try telling that to Ronaldo, because I'm sure he would absolutely laugh in your face.
I mean, Phil, one of the things we wanted to talk about this year was Ronaldo coming into the club and maybe helping develop even further Mason Greenwood and hopefully help Marcus Rashford as well. Why has it not worked?
Well, look, lads, I'll ask a couple of questions, right? Do you think if Ronaldo would sign for City, they'd be looking like United? No, right? So, how's it Ronaldo's fault that Wan-Bissaka can't cross the ball? How's it Ronaldo's fault that Harry Maguire can't pass the ball 5 yards? Oh, how's it Ronaldo's fault, that United can't create? It's just ridiculous. If Cristiano's the reason why you're losing, it would be the first time in his career, right? So, yeah, he makes me uncomfortable when he takes his shirt off, But other than that, if Cristiano Ronaldo came into a football club that was serially winning and aren't, then okay. Maybe. There's a football club that haven't won shit. Right? There's a football club. Take a look at Besiktas here last season. And you want to tell me Ronaldo's the problem? Take a look at Spurs last season. At home. Tell me Ronaldo's the problem? It's insane. Right? And see, this is being postulated by people that are looking at last season and this season. What's changed? That must be Ronaldo. Without any evidence whatsoever that it's Cristiano Ronaldo. Right? It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Right? So he's a serial winner, of which United need more of in the dressing room. And look, when it comes to young players learning off Cristiano Ronaldo, it all depends on whether they're willing to follow his example or not. If you've got someone sitting next to Cristiano Ronaldo that refuses to do what he does and refuses to make the commitment, you can't learn. It's incumbent upon yourself. Roy Keane said this himself. Players need to motivate themselves. Cristiano Ronaldo would have been the best player in the world if he'd have joined Cheltenham. because he demanded those standards of himself. He was the one in the gym at 7 in the morning. He was the one going to bed early. He was the one not drinking. He was the one controlling his diet. Him, right? United just gave him the platform. But when was the last time United developed a player that fulfilled his potential?
Probably Ronaldo.
Anderson, just go on and on and on. The list goes on and on and on. Right? That's down to them. How you perform. Listen, if I'm shit at work, it's not my employer's fault. It's my fault. Right? Yeah. So, and if I'm shit at work, the last thing I do is blame the guy sitting in the other cubicle. It's his fault, mister. I mean, I might have drawn to keep a job, but it's not true. It's insane. Take responsibility for yourself. Do you think when Roy Keane lost form, he blamed Philip Neville? Do you think Brian Robson lost form, he blamed Colin Gibson? It's ridiculous. Absolutely. And it's indicative of the problem that's inside United, where there are no personal responsibility. It's his fault, her fault, their fault, their fault. And that's, unfortunately, exactly what happens. You know, Rangnick came into that club, and I was given this at first hand, and bollocked a bunch of those players and told them home truths. What happens a couple of days later? They start leaking stuff to the media about his methods and everything else. Right?
Yeah.
So that was a result of Rangnick telling them a few home truths. That's because they've been coddled in the arm and the shoulder, and they tried the nice guy approach, and look where it got them.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very fair point you made there, Phil, and Tom Wade kind of says this again. When the supply is lower than the demand, failure will always occur, and that's exactly what you said there, just in that previous quote. John Commode says, Ronaldo has not been great this season. He's not the player he was, but I agree with Phil. Ronaldo is the model professional and don't think he is the main issue. In fact, Ronan Wright says, bin these prima donnas and play the kids. Apex says, even without Ronaldo, we're too easy to play against. That just eliminates the press. Can just play hot potato against us.
Let me say one thing on that, lads.
Yeah, good.
Chelsea second half at Anfield with 10 men were able to contain Liverpool quite easily.
They should have probably won the game.
I've seen it they're pressing with 10 men and not Ronaldo.
We know what happened. They lost final against Liverpool.
This pressing thing is nonsense. Ronaldo can't press. Well, why do you want them in?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's made up bullshit. There's more than one way to win a football game. Pressing matters, of course. But the game isn't won and lost in the back four. There's two other transitions you got to get through. Midfield and your defence. Cristiano Ronaldo is not the reason why transitions get through midfield, and he's not the reason why transitions get through defence. Your two other lines of defence there. Bullshit.
Yeah. I think this highlights the midfield even more, actually. I think we've got a fundamental problem in the midfield. And back to Tom's comment about supply and demand, he's absolutely right. Because we can't get things right in the middle of the park, get it forward quickly, have a bit more press in the middle, we aren't able to supply Ronaldo. And of course, Ronaldo's not going to look good if he's not scoring goals or assisting.
Yeah.
Also on that, Grant, one of the things that I find interesting about this 4-2-2 formation, and the Wolves manager Bruno Lage summed it up perfectly. With United playing the 4-2-2, your two behind the strikers come in centrally more, and that just exposes United's fullbacks time and time again. Now, Luke Shaw has definitely improved the Mourinho era. He was a great player for England at the Euros. He was really strong last season. Not been quite at the level this season, but still a quality player. Wan-Bissaka, on the other hand, teams know that they have to just basically try and shift United shape over to giving him the ball, and then they can pounce. He slows everything down. Even if he's able to amble past a couple of players, he always looks petrified whenever the ball comes near him. And with this 4-2-2, the fullbacks become even more prevalent. And if you're going to start Wan-Bissaka in a system like that, then you're going to be on to plums against anyone that's got a decent winger or two, because time and time again they're going to get chances to run at him. And I know people say, oh, he's better defensively, but he's got a habit of going to ground. And if he starts a game poorly, he's like Martial, in my opinion. If the first 15 minutes of his game are poor, he looks petrified for the other 75. And if you're going to play that level of system, you need really competent fullbacks that can do it. So I think there will be a change of approach for the Villa game and going beyond. I'm not saying it's going to be drastic, but if you're going to put such an emphasis on your fullbacks, you need fullbacks that can do it, and Wan-Bissaka simply cannot. he's not a scapegoat. It's not only him. I'm not going to blame him, but he's been set up to fail, in my opinion, with that system.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting debate, and there's so many really good arguments here made by everybody here. Just quickly back on Ronaldo, Neil Burns made this point. I said straight away, signing would unbalance the sell. Ronaldo seems to be all Ronaldo. Mason's growth as a centre forward has been stunted. We need a top quality defensive player. We've sort of alluded to that already in this discussion. And Gaynor Hammond says, no doubting Ronaldo is world class. We're not sure we should be working around him at his age. For the new, we should be building the team around the younger players like Mason and Sancho. I mean, going into the game against Aston Villa in the FA Cup, it's been a pretty terrible season domestically in the league. How does the FA Cup sit for Manchester United? And Phil, I'm going to come to you first on this because, United haven't been in the winning circle for many years now. I believe it's Man United have not, I don't think, won the FA Cup since Louis van Gaal was in charge. So how important is this tournament for United?
I mean, it's not really important. It's not indicative of anything. Arsenal have won it. They're still a mess. Wigan Athletic won it. Still a mess. Let's be honest. If it was any metric of success at United, Van Gaal would have kept his job. It's certainly welcome, but it doesn't automatically mean that you're on the right track and you're all of a sudden things are rosy, right? And just one other thing I want to address. First of all, I don't believe United are building a team around Ronaldo. And secondly,
who do you think they're building a team around then? Just to check.
Anyone is the problem.
So who should they be building that around? So who should they be building that around then? In your opinion,
whether they should be building around any one individual or not is a different question. When you look at a gegenpress, it's not about one individual; it's about collectively. That takes a long time to build. The club finished 8th in his first season, came in October. So, and secondly, Mason Greenwood's responsible for Mason Greenwood. If Mason Greenwood doesn't develop, it won't be because of Ronaldo. Thirdly, all superstars are all about themselves, right? Ibrahimovic was about himself. Ronaldo was about himself. Messi's about himself. That's what you get with players with massive profiles, right? So not an issue. That big clubs are able to handle it. I don't have an issue with that. Plus, the guy's a serial winner. But to me, the FA Cup, yeah, of course it's welcome, right? But you can win an FA Cup getting extremely lucky throughout the draw and not be the best team. If you get extremely... And I said this yesterday, and I mean this. When that Aston Villa draw came out, I was disappointed. Now, I'm happy because I genuinely would not trust this Manchester United to go and beat a team in League One. I think if they were drawn away against someone like Leyton Orient, they'd lose. And I don't want that experience. So to me, I don't have any trust in this United team against anyone. Because why they're feeling has not about ability, or they're feeling because they're not even given the basics, which Phil Jones showed, right? And when you don't work hard, talent means nothing. When you aren't willing to give 100%, when you aren't willing to be committed to the cause, you lose football games and you will adjust to someone else's level, which is why I don't trust United against someone like a Leyton Orient who would love to take their scalp. And United would surrender immediately, right? This is a problem because all those players, those 17 players are looking out, none of them will feel like fixing United's problem is of concern to them. They've already surrendered and said, I don't care what happens to this football club. I don't care if it ever gets right because I'm out, right? That's a big problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a very interesting statement there that you make. Mark, I'll come to you next. The FA Cup is a chance for Manchester United to get back into the winner's circle. But what's your take on this match with Villa? Because Villa, obviously, Steven Gerrard has come in. He's had a decent start. Not a great start, but a decent start. This is a very, very tricky game to call this for United. I was having a look at the betting earlier today, and of course, gamble responsible if you do that. Villa are 9-2 to beat United this weekend. I was astonished at that.
Yeah, I think that kind of emphasises everyone's confidence in United at the moment, quite frankly. I think Gerrard's come in and done a great job, steadied the ship, is playing good football. And I am not confident about it at all at the moment, and that's not because of what's come out. But I think the formation that we're going to play, they play a 4-3-3. They will congest that middle of the park, and at the moment we can't apply that pressure. We can't close down quick enough. So unless we see another United team that's going to be able to congest the middle of the park, I think we're going to struggle. I really, really do. Is it that Tellez and Dallo have been rested? Fred's been rested. Is it because he's got an eye on the FA Cup? Is it because they're potentially going to start because he's concerned about it too? I have absolutely no idea. I do agree with Phil in the fact that it doesn't change the direction of Manchester United. It's not a massive thing to get the FA Cup. But I do think that we need to have some sort of solace in this season. I do think that the FA Cup is something we've got to go for, just to appease the fans, just to maybe give a little bit of a lift to perhaps the players, even Ralf. But yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with what he says in I am not confident in playing anybody at the moment. I think that Gerrard's going to be ready. He's going to be fired up coming back to United and wanting to get a win. And I think that Villa might just well do that. It's difficult.
I mean, Callum, this is the first of a double header because obviously United play Villa in the Premier League after this. And of course, early in the season, Villa did win at Old Trafford, didn't they, with that Konsa goal from a corner. And then, of course, that was the game that Bruno Fernandes missed a penalty. How worried are you in this game?
I'm worried just for it sounds very negative, but for the rest of this month. The Brentford game's just been rescheduled for the 19th of January. So United have Villa Monday the 10th, then they've got Villa on the 15th, Brentford on the 19th, West Ham on the 22nd.
It's a busy schedule.
It's a busy schedule, and it's the last thing that Ralf Rangnick needs, given the babyish antics that we've talked about already. Hopefully United can win this game. Hopefully they can put on a level of performance that at least makes these leaks dampen down. It at least gives us a sense of positivity. It gives us a sense of believing that we can go on a run, because let's be honest, I mean, United need to go on a run at some stage, or top four is just an absolute pipe dream, as is the FA Cup, as is progressing in the Champions League. So a run has to be coming along at some stage for this to turn around. Obviously, I hope it starts on Monday against Aston Villa. If it doesn't start against Villa, then I do start to get worried, Grant, because to have 3 games within a week with this atmosphere that would only get worse after the defeat to Villa would really worry me. So I actually think this game is far more crucial than maybe people are giving it credit for at the moment. I'm not saying anything silly is going to happen with the manager or anything. I just mean from an atmosphere and ethos standpoint, if United lose to Villa, this could be an excruciating month where bad performance, bad result leads to even more negativity, and United cannot afford to hit rock bottom again, like you saw in the latter days of Mourinho, because if that happens under Rangnick after only 8 or 10 weeks, where on earth do the club go? Do you back the club to back Rangnick to rid out those 17 players and build a team again? No, he'll go by the wayside. There'll be a new contract for Pogba, there'll be a new emoji across the Old Trafford billboards, and it'll be all the same.
You used a very good word there, excruciating, and I think a lot of Manchester United fans will share with that. Gaynor Hammond says, I know I'm probably in the minority, but I'd much rather win the FA Cup than finish in the top 4. There are only 4 trophies up for grabs at the start of the season, important for this team to win one. And there was another interesting point that was made down here. I think it was Tyrell Willis says, I hate being negative, but United fans should be surprised if we miss out in the top 4. I think it was the top 4. We've got some tough games coming up. John Commode says, I went to the league game against Villa, which in many ways was the start of the end of Ollie's reign. Not confident at all. I'm going to the game. Can't bear to think what Old Trafford will be like if we lose. Gentlemen, it's been a really, really great, just over an hour we've been on here. We're coming very much to the final part of the show. I want to ask you guys, we're going to go round the table and sort of pick our 11 for this game against Villa. Now, that might be one of the hardest things we probably do tonight. And Phil said, forget it. Well, I'll give you the floor on that.
To me, it doesn't matter, right? Because it'll be exactly the same, right? And with Gainer's point, look, top 4 is a commercial goal, right? I personally don't necessarily think it's the worst thing if they don't finish top 4, because usually that prompts a reaction. When they finish top 4, they usually get complacent and think we only need minor tweak here or there, but not reflective of where United are at. So I think. They don't finish top 4, well, that's because they don't deserve to finish top 4. And so for me, I think people talk about Rangnick in a situation where, he's only got 6 months. that means that he's not going to get the respect of the players. But that also works two ways, because a guy that's only there for 6 months is dangerous. What's stopping Randy coming out in the media and starting slaughtering players and starting telling the home truth? He's not going to be on next season. That is his problem. So, that can work two ways. So Randy's got nothing to lose. He's not going to be tainted by anything that happens between now and the end of the season. But if they play well, he will. It'll enhance his reputation. Plus, he's also in a unique situation where he can out players without being worried about the long-term consequences to his job, of which Manchester United fans are entitled to some truth about what's going on inside that football club, and stop protecting players who have no respect for these fans that pay their wages. I mean, they should be refunding fans for some of those games out of embarrassment. So as far as the starting 11 goes, I have no idea. Maybe the only two I could say with absolute certainty are Phil Jones and De Gea that deserve to start. Outside of that, there really isn't much.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Phil, because Weekly Archer agrees. He says, Davdier, Phil Jones, and 9 planks of wood. Mark, do you share Phil's views on that? I mean, it's going to be an interesting game because Villa at times this season have shown that they can be vulnerable as well. I mean, they lost against Brentford recently. They're not coming into this in the greatest of form off the back of that game, but they do have a lot of very good players, particularly John McGinn. Danny Ings is back scoring again. They look like they're beginning to have a little bit of an idea as to what they're doing.
Yeah, it's anyone's guess. You're absolutely right, Phil. I couldn't call it either. I think that probably Henderson will get a start. I think that obviously David De Gea has been playing week in, week out. I think Henderson will probably start as well, and I'd like to see Phil Jones back again. I think he more than deserves another shout. You may see Elanga perhaps playing behind the front two. I think obviously in the early stages of the season, I appreciate we're playing a club like Villa. You tend to bring in players that may have not played so much, and I think you might see maybe even Donny van der Beek. We might see that man come in play, but we have to wait and see. I mean, to be honest with you, I did see a comment a moment ago about McTominay. Billy Gilmour forces McTominay into the back four for Scotland. Can't get into the Chelsea team, yet Man United will allow McTominay to be the main man in central midfield, and I think you probably will see him and Fred again as well.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a very interesting point, and Scotland are blessed with some decent players just there, and Billy Gilmour certainly is one of those. How I would love to see him in a Man United shirt. Colin, I'll come to you on the same thing.
I'm going to quote Keane and I'm going to quote Phil. David De Gea, Phil Jones, and 9 planks of wood. I mean, I think I would rather get 9. I would rather get 9 fans out the crowd to go on with De Gea and Jones, because I know there'd be at least some fight. If United win the game, I think it'll be very, very narrow. I think it'll be 1-0. It'll be cagey. It could be another penalty or a free kick, a moment of magic. I don't think it's going to be a comprehensive display of a 3 or 4-0 where you go, right, this is the corner turned. You don't go from all these leaks and 17 players being unhappy to turning form on like a tap. It just doesn't happen. So I think it could be a scrappy United win, but I normally look forward to football, but this is one of these games at the moment where I will on the day, on Monday, I will be looking forward to it. But at the moment, I'm just thinking to myself, here we go again.
We don't even have the benefit of home form either, because it's been so poor. We're playing at Old Trafford, and that gives us nothing.
There's that Grand Theft Auto picture, isn't there, with the guy going in, and I think it's shit. Here we go again. That's what it kind of feels like, isn't it, fellas? It's certainly a very tough time. Jarvis Cocker says the cup should be a bonus and already a good season. It's not the straw we should reach for, but because everything else plummeting. That's like papering over the cracks, in my opinion. Tom Wade says, De Gea, Phil Jones, and 9 overrated prima donnas who won't turn up as it's dark. So, Gators feeling a bit of positivity. We have some positivity on the show. She thinks we'll surprise everyone and win 3-0. I'll be delighted where we see 3 goals from. But it's been such an incident-packed show. We've been well over the hour. We've had so many comments. We've had so many talking points. There's so much stuff we could have gone on for. But I think it's time to call this end to the stream. It's been very, very good. Just wrap things up. Mark, thanks very much for coming on, my friend. Where can people find you on the socials?
Yeah, thank you very much, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thanks, boys, as well, for coming
on. Thanks, Mark.
Really
thanks for coming on, mate.
So everyone can find me on Twitter at Mark Biggs. Quite simple. And it'd be good to have some chats with you all.
Gentlemen.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Phil, just before you go, it's been great to have you on. Great to have your fantastic words of wisdom on the show. Where can people find you, fella?
Depends if the taxman's listening. Nowhere. Find me on Twitter, unfortunately. That's about the only place I want to be found. At Mark Kenzo on Twitter.
And your fantastic Beyond the Pitch podcast, along with Callum, is really getting a lot of traction. I listened to that recently. Very, very good show, and absolutely superb. And Callum, the last word to you. Where can people find you and your excellent work too?
You can find me on Twitter at Callum WFI and on Beyond the Pitch with Phil. Thanks again for having me on the show. I've loved it, and thank you, Grant, for hosting. You've been exceptional again. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure, lads. Mark, lovely to be on with you, mate. Grant, thanks very much. Callum, give you a shirt, mate. Cheers, lads. Have a great day.
No worries, Phil. We're about to end the stream, and Phil's just still left us, but it's great to have so many people tuning in tonight. We've had so much interactions. It's been non-stop. Remember to please like and subscribe for all Free United content. We are back, I'm sure, for another show in the not-too-distant future, but there's been some fantastic comments. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in. Thanks to Mark and Callum for being my guests once again on the show. And for all of us here, I think we all need to lie down. We all need to breathe. We all need to hope that there's some form of recovery for Manchester United on Monday against Aston Villa. Fingers crossed we could get the result. Until then, for myself, Grant, your host, thanks very much for tuning in. All the very best to you. Goodbye.
Phil's off the